Yeah, apologize. Something happened to Maria coming into here, so I mean, just to save time, I will start. And you know, it's about debt cancellation in this Jubilee year, which is the main campaign of CAFORs and many Caritas organizations around the world. We know that this is Jubilee year. This is a year of celebration, a year of renewal, a year for reconciliation, and historically the Jubilee year, as probably most of you know, was a year where the slaves were liberated, the land was put at rest, and debt was cancelled. So in this spirit, in this tradition, Mother Church, the Church, through all the, well, not all, but many of the Caritas agencies, which is basically are the agencies of the Catholic Church working on social issues and humanitarian issues, and CAFOR is part of Caritas, coming together to campaign on debt, on cancelling the debt. Probably many of you in this room have campaigned on debt cancellation in 2000, in the very famous Jubilee campaign. How many here have done? Oh gosh, okay, I am with veterans, so debt cancellation campaigners. And you know what happened? We come together all around the world with one message: cancel and adjust debt, and we did it. We advocate together and we managed to cancel $130 billion for the 36 most poor countries. And the cancellation of that money, of that debt, improved the life of millions of people. Particularly, there is a research and evidence about how cancelling that huge debt has huge benefits to education, for example. But friends, unfortunately, I am here to tell, and Maria is going to tell her technical stuff better than I, but I'm here to tell that unfortunately we find ourselves in another Jubilee having to campaign once again on debt. We are facing a global debt of unprecedented magnitude, and Maria can tell more the technicalities about that. And it's quite depressing, to put it simple in plain English, but also it's an opportunity to rethink what we need to address this time. Because one of the reasons why we are once again facing another debt crisis is because although we cancel the money, part of the money that the countries, the low-income countries will own, the structural causes, the fundamental reasons that keep low-income countries in a dysfunction, I completely forget that I have a presentation because I was not expecting to give a talk. The fundamental reasons that keep countries, low-income countries, in a dysfunctional cycle of debt were never addressed. And one again, we have this massive debt situation where 3.3 billion people are living in countries where their governments are forced to pay more money in repaying the external debts rather than in the most vital service like education, doctors, schools, teachers, public transport. And I am not an expert in the economic technicalities about debt, but I am an expert in the impact of debt because I grew up in Argentina, a country which defaulted of debt 9 times in its history, right? And I can tell you what it means later on because I wanted to follow the logic and what we can do as Catholics on this year. I don't know why it's rebellion. Anyway. So one of the reasons why we are once again in this debt crisis is 2 reasons. One is because the structural reasons, as I say, have never been addressed. And one of the reasons is that institutions that rule international debt, like the World Bank, for example, are hugely overrepresented by rich countries. Basically, are run by the very rich countries. And these countries are putting a huge amount of pressure in the low-income countries to ensure that this debt is repaid, rather than give a bit of a space to those low-income countries to pay this basic service. And we all agree that debt should be repaid. But it's not that those countries do not repay the debt, it's that because the interests are so high, they end up repaying the initial amount of money so many times. And this is why they say this is not just. Because institutions like the World Bank, for example, created 80 years ago, are created to support countries to overcome this crisis and this poverty, not to speculate it. So one of the reasons is that these institutions are ruling by the powerful countries, and they don't have a clear and transparent representation of everyone who's involved in this process. This is one reason. And the other reason, and this is probably new when we think about the other campaign on debt, cancellation of debt of the last Jubilee year, this is something that has changed a lot in the last 25 years, is that 25 years ago, when we campaigned on debt cancellation, most of the debt owned by low-income countries were owned to rich nations. Now, it's owned to private creditors. Who are the private creditors? The richest amongst the richest. Banks like HSBC, asset managers like Rubber. And here we have the expert coming, and he's going to join us. I just finished that. So these private creditors are basically putting incredible pressure on low-income countries to pay the debt and have an incredibly high rate. Sometimes basically the percentage of interest is up to 6 or 10 times more than when they lend money to rich countries. And when a country says, look, I am in problems, we have COVID-19, for example, the things that happen, I am in debt crisis, I am not able to pay the debt, could we sit down and rethink this debt? These private creditors, in more cases, don't want to sit down on the table to renegotiate that debt, and instead go and sue those countries. So this is really unfair, and this is why the Jubilee year is such a moment for us to push for that. But also in this year, it's not only that it's opportunity from a spiritual point of view as Christians, but also there is a lot of opportunities in the political platform and through the international spaces to push for that. In just 1 month, we have a United Nations conference for financing development, when debt cancellation is going to be on the top of the agenda, and we also have the G20 in November, when debt is going to be on the top of the agenda. So this are basically the two of the many reasons why we have gains in a debt crisis. But I will pass to Maria, who is here, to tell the rest of people and know what they want, but what we are asking for this campaign. And Maria, why we are asking these two? This is our ask, and what we are asking is. Yeah. So she's a super expert on that.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was absolutely brilliant. You said all the things that I was going to say. Okay, so on the solutions, there's a longer list of things that we're asking for, but these are two of the key things that we're calling for. So the first one, many of you will be familiar with it if you've been keeping an eye on CAFOD's petitions and campaigns. We've been calling for a debt justice law here in the UK, and that's because the UK, it's no longer a superpower in the way that it once was, but because of the role of the City of London and British overseas territories in the global debt and tax systems, the UK actually remains a debt and tax superpower in many ways. And this is particularly significant in the area of debt because 90% of loans owed by low-income countries to private creditors, so banks, asset managers, hedge funds, are actually governed by English law. 90%, it's actually slightly over 90%. So that is absolutely enormous. So the power that the UK government have to tackle this crisis is huge. And so that's why we're campaigning for them to pass a law that would essentially compel these private lenders, these banks and hedge funds, to participate in debt relief negotiations alongside all of the other lenders. At the moment, we've had a lot of situations in recent years where lots of lenders have come to the table, bilateral lenders, countries like the UK, the US, France, etc., and some of the more cooperative private lenders, but deals have not been able to be reached because some of the greedier private lenders have simply refused to take part, and it's deadlocked the entire process. So the UK could pass a law that would say that all private lenders have to take part. So that's the number one thing that we're pushing for in the UK right now, because it's a clear action that the government can take that would enable the system to function better and have a huge impact overall. And it's also something that the last Labour government actually did in 2010. But that law is now outdated, it no longer applies. So we're simply asking this government to reinstate a new law that is up to date. And then finally, a new comprehensive debt framework. So a framework for governing international debt under the UN is the second thing that we're calling for. At the moment, debt governance is very fragmented. There's no central comprehensive framework that is managed and organised and oversees international lending and borrowing. It's very bitty. It's, a bit of it's under the OECD, some of it's under the IMF, some of it's under the G20, and you'll notice all three of those things that I've just mentioned are run and controlled by lenders, run and controlled by lender countries. So it's no wonder that there's this imbalance in power within negotiations that is stalling them, because in all of the spaces where debt is governed, debtor countries are not represented properly. So we're simply calling for a central framework that could mean that the system is less fragmented, works better, is more holistic, more comprehensive, covers more ground, and also is in a fair space in which both debtors and lenders are represented. And that's just, the same legal principle we'd expect in any other area of our economy. If a firm went bust and a firm went bankrupt and couldn't pay its lenders, we would not expect them to be to kind of have that case arbitrated in a legal framework that's entirely run by the lenders that lend the money. It just simply wouldn't happen in any other area of our legal system. It wouldn't be acceptable. So we're calling for the same principles to be applied to debtor countries.
Just carry on going. I can mention three things that we can do, but later. But you carry on with the presentation, or you want me to say three things that we can do?
Go for it, and I'll comment.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the ask, and the reason we have a very fair reason to do that. So there are three things there is a lot of things that we can do, but particularly three very simple things. I believe that is okay. So one of them is what Maria mentioned. We have a petition, and this is not the CAFOR petition. This is the church petition. This is the Caritas International petition. This is a petition that is running in different parts of the world, calling to cancel the debt, but adapted to the reality of each country, because we can be, depending on what is happening in each country, we can become more effective. And Maria can develop a little more later, but there is really good opportunities this year with the G20 and the conference that we are going in just a few weeks' time. So, have you signed the petition, the online petition?
Yes.
Yes? Fantastic. Now we are inviting everyone to go to your parish with a hard copy petition that you can download it or ask for CAFOR, and encourage everyone in your parish to sign that petition. It's really important that globally we get a big number. Caritas International has initially an ambition of 10 million. Why ambition? That could be possible because it's the need. When Maria go to the conference in June, or we have the G20, we want to come as a church and say we have 10 million people, we have the Catholic community is united on that. But many other organizations, interfaith groups, and other charities too. But leaders need to understand that this is a priority. Number two is please agenda, 9 of July, with our friend from the Climate Coalition, we are descending to Westminster to talk to our MPs.
Say that again, please.
9 of July. 9 of July, you can register in CAFOR website. We can talk later, you know, like as I say, I was like, so on 9 of July. So we want to lobby our MPs in Westminster about climate and debt. 90% of the most vulnerable countries, most vulnerable climate change countries are on debt crisis and are spending almost 5 times more in paying this debt rather than tackling the urgency of climate change. That's not okay. So we want to come together, land in Westminster and talk to our MPs. Many of you probably have attended other Westminster's mass lobbies, right? With CAFOR? Yes? Who? You collect? Okay. It was fun, right? Because not only we are doing the right thing, but also this opportunity of coming together, and also this opportunity to be with other supporters of 100 organizations, and have this Catholic voice, you know, we Catholic care about that. So, and faith groups, and there is friends of others, faith groups in this room, have a really important role to play when it comes to climate and debt. You know, we basically ensure that the climate movement is broader, and we really bring a diversity. You know, when they want to undermine the movement of climate change, saying this and that, well, the Catholic community and other faith groups are very diverse in demographics. So it's really important that we have a very strong voice there. And if someone was quite specific of Pope Francis' papacy, you know, with this commitment to our common home. So friends, 9th of July, please. If you live in different parts of the country, at CAFOR we are working with our regional staff to try to organize coming together in a way that is affordable, in a way that is inclusive, in a way that all of us can come. So don't be afraid if you're in Yorkshire or wherever, oh my gosh, it's too expensive the ticket, or how I'm deal, no, we are working on that as much as we can. So come to me and we can talk. And the last thing is, you know, 15 November, a very special COP and very special climate talk we have is in Brazil, in the Amazon. You know, the indigenous community are hugely affected by climate. Latin America has hugely been affected for climate change. And debt and climate has a lot of link, and I mentioned something, but Maria could share a little more. So this is important that also pencil that day, because we wanted to organize something here in London and probably in some cities across the country to express solidarity to the brothers and sisters in Brazil and the global south about this issue. This is a special COP. At least it's the first in a few years, which is not going to be run in a petro state, you know. It's in a country which has a huge tradition and social movements, and it's in the Amazon. So this is again solidarity. And so these 3 things for now, and like really practical, please come to talk to me at the end of the chat, because CAFOR is facilitating as much as we can. We have the resources, all are free. We are here to serve you and to ensure that your campaign work is as easy as possible. You know, that is our job. Maria, do you want to? I have a little animation, but you just.
Yeah. So I think we need to wrap up in a bit, but just to build on what you were saying about the petition and the mass lobby and speaking to your own MP and talking to the UK government, it's so important because we've seen in the last few months that this government think that no one cares about aid and that they can get away with scrapping half of the aid budget and no one's going to call them out on it. And we have to let them know that they're wrong about that. And we have been trying to say to them, you know, you should be spending on aid. If you're not willing to spend on aid and your excuse is there's not enough money, then there are things that you can do that would have a huge impact. Just to put this into perspective briefly, last year the average African country spent 50 times as much on paying interests on their debts to wealthy countries and foreign creditors than they received in aid from the UK. 50 times. So the UK government has no excuse, and we need to let them know that we're not going to let them get away with just dismissing these essential issues in this moment when the climate crisis is escalating.